I'm Jeff Cornwall, and this is the Entrepreneurial Mind. Today we're going to have a conversation about Southern Alpha and learn a little bit more about what they're doing in terms of promoting the South as a region for entrepreneurial development. We'll be back to talk with our guests in just a moment.
Bandwidth for today's show is brought to you by SoftLayer.com. We love SoftLayer here at Talkapolis. They are the greatest hosting company ever. They make everything easy. Check out their website at SoftLayer.com. Thanks again for sponsoring the show.
Talkapolis, the social media TV network for your city.
I'd like to welcome our guests today, Walker Duncan and David Ledgerwood, and they're here to talk about Southern Alpha. Give us a little background about how this project got started and what's the core mission of what you're trying to do with Southern Alpha. Would you like to go first, or would you like
Sure. Well, Walker, being employee one, might have you backfill this story. I came in about 5 months into the launch of the site and worked closely with Marcus Whitney, founder and chairman. And the object that we all work toward is to tell the story of the Southeast startup ecosystem, and that's news, intelligence, and inspiration for founders, for investors, for developers, and the creatives, and the confluence of all those people together. So creating the thing that adds the alpha to the Southeast startup scene, and that's the value add, and yet in the developer way, it's the alpha, like, hey, we're just getting started.
Well, because the South's kind of a mystery to a lot of other parts of the country in terms of the entrepreneurial activity down here. I mean, they know a little bit about RTP, and probably that's about it.
Well, and that I think that was sort of the central founding notion that Marcus had when he and I spoke about doing this, I guess now almost 2 years ago, is that, Nashville has this burgeoning scene, and that's wonderful, and we're not alone in that at all. There's Atlanta, there's RTP, there's Louisville, there are a variety of places, but they all operate very much as islands, and that if we can sort of grow that regional awareness, that will be to the benefit of all concerned.
Because if we look at the activity and deal flow in other parts of the country, there's more of a tie together in the Northeast and out on the West Coast, but we just haven't seemed to pull that together. We don't see a lot of deal flow going from city to city. And what do you think is the cause of that? Why haven't we seen more activity between Nashville investors and RTP, or RTP in Atlanta? What's holding that back, do you think?
I mean, I would say it would be that sort of intra-ignorance. It's that they literally don't, people in Atlanta don't know what's happening in Nashville, and people in Nashville, vice versa, don't have a very clear picture of what's happening in Atlanta. Just, I guess, because to this point they haven't had to. But as all of these scenes grow, they will hit a ceiling where they are unable to grow any further unless they can attract more regional interest. And there's no reason that they have to then expand to going to New York, going to Silicon Valley. It's within the region. There is a wealth of resources that can be drawn upon, and increasing that awareness is a big part of what we do.
Do you think that's going to help diversify deal flow a little bit in the cities too? I mean, one of the things we've talked about in this show before is that Nashville has been really focused on a pretty narrow segment of healthcare.
That's right.
And a pretty narrow segment of healthcare, and yet I think there are opportunities here if people kind of understand that space.
Yeah, I think that's true. I was just sitting at a workshop the other day with a guru UX person from Silicon Valley that we went and we spent some time with. And she said that what's neat about the Southeast is that people and entrepreneurs here are solving real problems for real industries, and that there isn't the consumer social photo sharing event type of idea that sort of spawns a Facebook. And here we solve trucking and logistics and healthcare IT and education, and so these big problems that actually have value to return to the investor through there. And the other story I heard for example, at the Southeast Venture Conference that we went to earlier this year, it was the panels of VCs from the coast saying, we want to invest in the Southeast because the valuations are better, the money goes farther, and there's a bootstrapping sort of methodology that people don't think here, that you'll get a $50 million check for a napkin idea, that we're actually going to deliver on
I've
that.
heard entrepreneurs around here saying they don't want as much money as
Right.
some of the VCs in other areas are trying to throw at them.
Right, that's exactly what seems to be the case, is that we want to grow smart, we want to have longevity. There might be really good reasons to deploy capital, but we aren't going to just spend it for the sake of spending it.
So let's talk a little bit about what you do day to day to make this happen. What is Southern Alpha? What are some of the stories you're going after? What's some of the structure and format? How do you promote this throughout the region? How are things working?
Well, we are continuing to work on that. It's the sort of short answer to that. But we have some feet on the ground in a variety of cities in the Southeast. We've worked out some content sharing deals with people who have only sort of taken a view of their own city. But if we can sort of bring enough of them to the table, then we can start to sort of construct our own regional view. But day in and day out, it is. I mean, I am a journalist by training,
Right.
and so I, am looking for news and calling sources and, shaking the trees.
Well, I've noticed you've really tried hard to reach out to different parts of the region as well. There's a good story on some of the stuff going on in Charlotte that just got posted, and how are you driving traffic? What are you doing to kind of get the eyeballs going on this?
There's been an inbound nature too that's growing, which is nice. We just got a inquiry from Florida from an entrepreneur in St. Pete, I think, who's sort of saying, hey, you guys are doing great work. I've heard about your site over and over again. What can I do to get Florida some greater coverage? People from New Orleans are doing great work. So the inbound discussion is growing, and so we've just talked about new features that we want to increase that so we can make it a lot easier to bring to the fold the stories that need to be told. There's the news angle, and there's such sort of inspiration angle, which is the kind of stuff that people write about has durability. It lasts. It's the type of thing that if you're an entrepreneur, in any of these cities, anywhere, it's valuable to have the advice coming from a successful entrepreneur in Nashville or in Charlotte. The things that we all go through together, and intentionally to develop. So there doesn't seem to be a huge push for the region until you ask about it. And I think that new mindset is what we're trying to push.
What else do you think needs to happen to kind of encourage that regional development? Certainly this kind of communication piece and kind of a common picture of what's going on is important, but what else needs to happen?
I mean, I think there's a fair amount of just by growing the amount of regional content that we can bring to bear, that has always, in our experience, increased the people sort of reaching out to us and saying, wow, I'm interested to learn about what's happening in these various. I think it's just sort of shaking people from apathy, honestly, is encouraging them to start to take a more regional view. And there's always going to be a sort of push and pull with that, and some walls that you have to clear. But as it grows, there are increasing numbers of people like the guy from St. Petersburg who are saying, I like what you're doing. We have some cool stuff that we'd like to have featured in Southern Alpha or similar such portal. How do we go about doing that? And I think the more that we can grow that, the better.
And revenue models for this kind of a business? I know at some point you've got to be able to sustain this. And,
Certainly.
And that's certainly been a struggle in your field of journalism.
Well, the first thing people tell you is, it must be about advertising, and that just doesn't seem to be the case in a niche online publication. I can't
Right.
make that math work. And so
Right.
what starts to happen is that you realize you value a very niche, dedicated audience who is interested in this thing, and there are service providers, and there are economic development entities, and there's like folks who want that to happen. So there's a sponsorship angle there. And then there are pieces of it that we've sort of gone after from the event standpoint and doing some neat things there. So this sort of road trip idea that if you're going to connect the dots, there's a whole lot of interstate in between there. And there are conferences all over the place that people want to go to. Can we load up a bunch of buses and make the Southern Alpha Road Trip Express to go there? And that's actually taken off far more than I could have imagined.
And you have to have that presence to make it seem more than just a Nashville operation.
Oh, absolutely.
Right,
yeah.
and the target communities love it. So we rolled into Jackson, Tennessee the other day we doubled the amount of people at their workshop, and it was just a whole lot of fun, and the sponsors jumped on board, and everybody thought it was a great event. And now we're planning to go to DevLink potentially in Chattanooga, and there's all over the place. There's great stuff going on, and why not connect the dots and load up buses and go there? So that turns out to be not such a bad thing.
And buses not just from Nashville, but have a
Right.
bus loaded up from any one of the cities dotting the Southeast, and then bring them all in under the sort of Southern Alpha banner of we're bringing all of you together.
Very good. So if people have not gone to your site yet, how do they find you?
SouthernAlpha.com.
SouthernAlpha.com.
A lot of people will tell you now that they only follow things on Twitter, so it's at Southern Alpha.
Kept it pretty simple.
Yeah.
That works. Thank you,
find us
gentlemen. I
anytime.
appreciate you coming by today.
It's good being
Absolutely.
here.
Thank you.
Thank you.